His name is Merle Singer, a renowned rabbi in Boca Raton, Florida, who retired in 2005, but at about the same time he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Our story begins here at a rehearsal for Ballet for Parkinson's in 2014. Merle is one of the participants. Everyone here has Parkinson's. Like other physical activities, ballet has been shown to help those suffering from the effects of Parkinson's by alleviating some of the physical symptoms.
I was diagnosed, June will be 2 years ago.
And when you heard that news?
I didn't believe it.
I'm sorry?
I didn't believe it.
Why?
Superwoman? I just didn't, I never would have expected it. Threw me a left curve, came out of left field.
The dancers are determined not to let the disease get the better of them.
Well, my physician, when she diagnosed me, said, "You're not going to die from it. It's not the end, so see how much you can positively go forward."
There are lots of men here, not threatened by those who believe ballet is a girl's thing.
I never felt that ballet was a girl's thing. I thought it was something that required a lot of skill, a lot of, work, a lot of effort to become like this famous ballet, Baryshnikov.
Nureyev?
Nureyev, yeah. At least they're not what you might call sissy types. Right. It's a tough sport. I consider it a sport.
No, I have no inhibitions about it. There's more than just ballet here. We're doing jazz and all the movements, and that's important for us to keep moving. And this is another way of us being encouraged to move our bodies more.
You can't help but be impressed by the optimistic outlook everyone here has.
And you can't buckle under it. You got to buck up, as my mama would say. You just got to do it. Do what you got to do. I was lazy as a child. My mama said that's no excuse. Bring your lazy and get it done. I don't have down moments. I don't do down.
Okay.
I don't do down. Down is not an option for me.
Okay.
And it's because of my mother.
Okay.
She didn't do down. We didn't learn how to do down.
In the public performance, Merle Singer is a key player. Over the last few years, he has had his ups and downs with the disease. Even though this day he looked versatile and healthy, wowing the crowd with his performance, the day before he sounded pessimistic.
I'm getting angry now that I can't do the things I want to do. And in fact, this week, my wife got a wheelchair, one of those walkers, and I was ticked off as hell that I was going to get that, and I didn't want to get it. And finally I said, all right, I will. And I was ordering a chairlift because I fell backwards on the stairs at home. And I'm angry at that. I'm very angry right now.
Who are you angry with?
The disease. It's not anybody. I feel bad for the family, the kids, having to rub all my stuff.
So you weren't worried that this disease is winning?
It's winning now, yeah, and it ticks me off. Because everything else I've been able to control and be able to win. I finally feel I guess I finally have a match. I'm not giving up, but I'm just angry right now.
This is his story, the life and times of Merle Singer. It is June 14th, and we are on our way to Duluth, Minnesota. Accompanying Merle and me is a graduate student who is studying at Lynn University. She will do the filming. The three of us are flying in a private plane, provided free by a congregant and longtime friend of Merle's, Louis Beck.
It's impossible to say no to Merle Singer. And again, it goes back to the fact that it's unselfish motivation. You know that in the end, Merle has a real purpose for what he's doing, and that you will see the results of unselfish giving and devotion in the end. So there's no no to Merle.
You feel each time like you're going backwards?
No, I feel the excitement.
Excited. Merle's excitement at returning to his childhood home is palpable. He returns here often, but this time he's come to build special memories and share them with us. The city itself has not changed all that much. Like so many other urban areas around the country, the recession hit hard here, but many of the streets and buildings are still the same. The high school he attended is still there, and that's the building that once housed his father's clothing business. It was a happy life in a beautiful community, but with an undercurrent of anti-Semitism.
And her mother came out on the porch, looking very angry and very...
One day, when Merle was playing in a neighbor's backyard, her mother came out of the house, visibly angry, and said,
"What is he doing there in our yard? Get that Jew out of here." And then I remember Casey, the girl chasing me, called me Christ killer. And I said, "I didn't do anything." I had no idea what she was talking about.
His sister Sharon remembers the anti-Semitism even affected their father's business.
A lot of businesses were owned by Jews in Duluth, and I think there was some animosity because of that, and I think that's how they felt it.
People would say, "Don't go there."
Yes, because they're Jewish.
The house he lived in, known to the family as 1723, still stands. We wanted to get in, but no one came to the front door. But Merle, being Merle, would not give up. He came around the back and found another entrance, and the man who manages it. The man showed us up the stairs to the area where Merle and his sister had separate rooms.
Thank you so much.
All right, come on in.
The one stately house is now divided up into apartments. Merle's room and his sister's, for the most part, empty and run down.
Well, I can't allow myself to use the word deteriorate, because that would mean that what I have as memories of this would deteriorate. So I will say it's changed. It's not what it was, but there's enough here to let me in my mind and I can look at you and I can see the original furniture. I don't see this stuff right here now. I see what it was like when I was growing up. I hang things here. My brother, Jerry, didn't want anybody to touch his thing. That was the older brother. So he built a chest, but I knew where the key was. And these were all our socks, our shirts, everything. You don't have closets in a store like this anymore.
Well, when you see this room, do you remember it as bigger or smaller?
No, I remember it like this.
You remember it like this?
Like this.
Merle wants to talk about this home, but he often becomes quite emotional. This is one of the effects of his Parkinson's disease.
It's exactly how I remember it.
But that doesn't get in his way. As he tells us, in its day this home had an elegant entrance and beautiful staircase just like this, now all gone. When you see your sister on Thursday again, what will you tell her about the house?
That's where I saw it. It's there. The rooms are there. Rooms where we grew up. Rooms that we had not so good memories of, rooms that we have great memories of. And they only let us in. And that's all I needed.
Merle spent his early years at East Junior High School, about a 10-minute walk from his home. But he'll never forget a day back in May of 1952.
I came into school that morning, went to homeroom, and in homeroom, the homeroom teacher said, "Merle, will you please come up to my desk?" Came up to her desk and said and I knew at that point she was going over with different students the results of our aptitude test that we took in 7th grade. And she said to me, "What are your plans for school?" And I said, "We'll finish up here at East Junior High School, then I'm going to be like the rest of my family. I'm not going to be staying here for high school, which I could have at that time. My year was the first year. We were the first graduating class. So I'm not staying here. I'm going down to Central. Because my mother went to Central and graduated very young and at the top of her class. My uncles did. My brothers did. My sister went to East Central High School. I'm going too. It's part of a family tradition. So no, you're not. So what do you mean I'm not? So you'll be lucky if you graduate trade school, Vo-Tech school. What?
Merle was adamant he would go on to high school. The teacher counseled him, talk to your guidance counselor, a man who was to make a huge difference to Merle Singer's young life, a man who had passed away a few years earlier.
And you found out that he died at age 95, 5 years ago. So I really would love to be able to go on. Parkinson's makes me so emotional. But I'd like to go and thank him for what he did in that short meeting.
What did he do?
He invited me into his office, a small office downstairs there in this building. He said, well, Merle, you didn't do very well in this test. Your teacher was right. But interesting enough, he pulled out my record and he said, in your kindergarten test, you did very well and you showed great promise, academic promise. He said, we don't know why, but somehow the kindergarten test is a better predictor of ability than anything else. Hell, it was a pre-reading test. It was a test of my intellectual ability without reading.
It was only years later, says his wife Myra, that a colleague, when hearing about Merle's problem with reading and understanding, diagnosed Merle with dyslexia.
And the relief came because, I could say to him, you're not stupid, and you're not backward, and you're not trying. You're trying your darndest, but you have this problem that prevents you from seeing the words the same way I do, or other people.
Do you think it affected his self-image?
Oh, absolutely, without question. Without question. And still to this day, even when he knows he has had a successful career, he's a successful guy, people love him, he still doesn't feel good enough. And still has that same drive to have to work harder than everybody else and do more than everybody else in order to be good enough. And I'm sure that it is related to those experiences.
But authorities in those days didn't know about dyslexia, and he went undiagnosed. Still, Merle was firm. He was going to high school and to college.
When he was walking home, I said to myself, all right, Merle, you catch your way into a star. You're not going to catch everything you get. You go for it, but damn it, you're going to learn to fly.
And boy, did you ever.
I didn't know I could or would, but I just I was going to do it. I was going to go for it.
This has been the story of Merle's life. Persistence in the face of adversity. Nothing stops him. While we were in Duluth, we visited Lakeshore Scenic Drive. And if there were any better example of his persistence, it could be seen that day, as Merle suddenly made his way out to the rocks bordering the lake. I worried he would fall in. After all, he did have Parkinson's disease, and it was clear he was becoming unstable on his feet. And the rocks were slippery and dangerous, but that didn't bother him. He was determined, moving carefully but easily. He kept on walking, then bent down and put his hands in the lake, feeling its cool and clear water. Then sitting on the rocks and meditating. He made his way back, walking without a care, determined to deny the undeniable.
Does somebody have Parkinson's around here?
When you came back, you jokingly said, "Does anyone here have Parkinson's?"
Yeah.
Why did you say that?
Because standing there, I felt normal.
You felt?
Normal. I haven't run over rocks like that or jumped around like I've been doing this morning for years. Well, at least for a while. And you see me use the walker, and I will use the walker again. So I'm not cured. But I felt free. Same thing I did when I was water skiing, snow skiing. I felt liberated from the restrictions of the disease. Because Parkinson's, when you have it, at least the version I have of it, tightens me up. If I don't take my medicine, I'd be standing here like this. I would have very difficulty moving and thinking and speaking. That just was not here.
Exactly. It was like the old times.
Yeah, it was washed away. If I had a bathing suit on, it was a little warmer, I could jump in the water. Not stay very long, it's very cold. But I could do everything I did as a kid. I felt like a little kid.
And you didn't feel the restrictions of the condition?
No.
This park is filled with memories. As a Reformed Jew, Merle was observant, but by his own description, nothing special. That's why he was so surprised when the evening of his confirmation, while parking here with a friend, the girl made a strange observation.
That evening, I went out on a date with one of the girls in the class, who were wonderful good friends, and I really mean it. We were friends for many years. And we were sitting right here. My back was to the driver's door, her back was to the passenger door, and we were sitting just talking like you and I are talking. And maybe the music, the radio was playing, Smoke Is in Your Eyes, or the one, I'm the Great Pretender, which both would have fit, because she turned to me and said, "Merle, you want to be a rabbi, don't you?" And I said, "Sandy, you gotta be crazy. Where did that come from?" I had no earthly idea. I never thought of the idea of becoming a rabbi. I see myself as one. But right here, Sandy planted the idea. She planted the seed. And at the proper time, it really took flower.
What do you think she saw?
I think she saw a passion in me. And when I gave my confirmation speech, which I have to admit was largely written by my mother, but there was a message in there of social consciousness, that if you're going to be a Jew today, you've got to be involved in society and the issues that are before us.
Merle went on to college, coming here to the University of Minnesota in Duluth. By his own admission, he had no idea what he wanted to do with his life. At one point, he thought he would become an industrial engineer.
I failed math. I was going to become an engineer. I was going to go into human HR work. I was going to work with people as an engineer in industrial engineering. Because in the 1950s, that was the field for guys. If you didn't go into medicine, you go into engineering. Well, I failed math, and the teacher passed me because she liked me, and she and I agreed that she'd give me a passing grade if I promised never to take another math course. And I said, done. But at that point, I had to do something, and so I didn't know, honest to God. Until Al Borsman came up here, I didn't know what I was going to do. In fact, I went to the guidance department of the university at the other campus, took tests there. In fact, I never told you this. One of the tests, the Kluter Strong Interest Test, I came back and to the results, and I had a funny look on his face. He said, "I've never seen anything like this before." I said, "Well, tell me." He said, "You went off the chart on funeral director," which I, in retrospect, I feel I would have done very well in. And I looked at him and I said, what kind of job is that for a Jewish boy? I'm not going to become a funeral director.
You said you went off the chart.
Off the chart. And I know why now. Because I love medicine. I love the idea of working with the human body. And I love being with people in time of need and helping them through that moment. And it's one of the areas of the rabbinate that I've been very successful. without trying. It's been very easy to me to get involved in very difficult situations with families and help them resolve them in a good way that they can live with.
And when he said funeral director, you said,
No way. First of all, in Duluth, the only funeral homes were Johnson's, or there were no Jewish funeral homes. What kind of job is that for a Jewish boy? How can a Jewish boy be a part of a funeral director? You got me crazy.
it was now the late 50s, the beginning of the civil rights movement in America. Jews around the country were getting involved, fighting alongside blacks for change. One day, the head of the Commission on Social Action for Reform Judaism, Al Vorspan, came to UM to speak.
He said, whatever religion you are, whoever you are, you must be involved. If you're going to do anything, it's time for you meaning all of you, freshmen, undergraduates, all of you undergraduate students need to find a way to be involved in the social issue today. You cannot avoid it. If you avoid it, you do it at your own peril, and the peril of this country.
And that hit home someplace.
Oh, it was a message that was tailor-made for me. It was like he was only speaking to me.
The speech he made was held where Merle stands. This area was once the auditorium, which has now been torn down. But the speech was an epiphany for Merle.
Listening to Al Vorspan, I felt I never saw the rabbit as a calling before, but I'll say here today to you that it was a calling that I responded to.
But the calling, what's interesting to me is the calling came from a man who was not in the rabbit.
Yes, that's what I find significant.
How did that happen?
Because the calling came to me from the earth, from people.
So you knew coming in here that being somebody who helped people was something.
Yes.
You knew that you had a good feeling about Judaism because you were heavily involved at your temple.
Yeah, right.
And here's a man who comes and tells you how you can pull it all together.
Yeah, exactly. You can be Jewish without having to be follow the traditions. You can pick and choose, which is the key to Reform Judaism. Isn't that it's really, I'll think in a minute. One philosopher said, when asked, do you put on tefillin? And he said, his answer was, not yet. And that's the way I approach Judaism. For many years I wouldn't wear a yarmulke. I wear one now when I'm in the synagogue. So the answer is, do I keep kosher? Not yet. Do I do this? Not yet. Do I I'm involved with people with their causes? Yes. Now. And I want you to join me.
Soon after, he applied to Hebrew Union College, the seminary in Cincinnati, and was accepted into the undergraduate program. He would become a rabbi.
Yeah. Son of a gun.
Before we left Duluth, Merle wanted to see a childhood friend he hadn't seen for years.
Rabbi!
Yeah, I guess so. Commander.
Dave Wheat had grown up around the corner from Merle's home, even attending the same classes as Merle in elementary and high school.
Well, I remember Merle always as a friend, and as a Jewish friend. We would get in snowball fights, and I would make him mad because I hit him once and target, but we won't say any more about that.
Merle's father would drive the two boys to school every day because his business was down the block from the high school. Like Merle, Dave went on to college. In 1963, he graduated.
I had applied for the Naval Aviation Program but hadn't heard anything. And then I received a phone call one day from the local draft board, who was the mother was Ed Luxon's mother, who worked down there. And she said, "David, do you know you're #1 on the draft list for next month?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that." And she said, "Well, I just wanted to let you know, and if you do something quickly, you can avoid that." And in other words, So I went down to the Naval Reserve Unit and started my process there with the Navy. And shortly thereafter, I heard that I'd have been accepted into the Naval Aviation Program.
Dave went into the Navy as a radar intercept officer for the Naval Air Force. Then in mid-1965, he was sent to Vietnam. On October 17th, after 80 successful flight missions, his F-4 Phantom fighter was shot down while on a mission to protect a strike force operating over North Vietnam.
We flew our mission and loitered in the area between China and the strike force, and then our strike force departed the area, and then so with F we started following them out, and that's when we got hit. And Front Cedar, we'd been hit, and we'd been hit on a couple other missions too, but not as seriously as this one. And the plane did an aileron roll, and just things added up, and it was time to punch out.
He parachuted down, landing in a wooded, hilly area.
Crawled up the hill and was parting the grass aside and trying to stand it up behind me so as not to leave a compacted path up the hill that they could follow. One of the goofy thoughts was, this is just how John Lane does it in the movies, you know. These things go through your head, and where they come from you don't know. And it was just like the ejection. I thought, boy, this is just like a ride at the state fair. So got up the hillside about 2/3 of the way up, hid behind a tree and some brush. Eventually the militia people came into the area and searched the area and walked as close as you are to me a couple of times and didn't see me. And then finally I could hear this guy coming up the hill, and I could just tell he was following that magic path that I had hoped to cover up. And he looked behind the tree, and there I was, and he didn't have a gun, he had a knife, and he was pretty excited, and he looked more scared. He jumped backwards, and I was taken in, and the rest is history.
At the time, Merle was studying in Cincinnati to become a rabbi and was stunned when he heard the news.
It was terrible emotions, terrible emotions. I won't even say mixed emotions. That this guy, this kid that I grew up with, who the last conversation Dave and I had was I saw Dave one evening. I was out running and ran into Dave, and he was eating carrots. I said, "What the hell are you doing with carrots?" He said, "Well, I'm trying to get my eyesight better so I can be a pilot." And I think that's when, Dave, you were down in Pensacola, or in that area, trying to be a pilot. I said, "Great." And then I didn't hear anything. I thought, well, he was a pilot, and he was flying. And then I heard that he was shot down, and I felt bad, terrible.
Dave was held in the Hanoi Hilton, though no one back home knew whether he was dead or alive. He was repeatedly interrogated and tortured for information.
I was whipped and had hands cuffed behind the back, hands cuffed behind the back with the arms across the back this way. 4 days, 3 nights sitting on a concrete stool to write something, just a biography of ourselves, but we only give name, rank, serial number, and date of birth, and resist to the best of our ability. And eventually they can break you, and they will, but even then you could write anything because they didn't have any concept of our way of life. I wrote something, and then they came back and said, not enough, and you must write more. So I wrote that we live in a big house, and all the walls were painted white, and we had these big round polka dot circles painted, red, blue, and just dumb stuff like that, that if that ever got out and back home or to the authorities back home, that they would know that we were being tortured to write something, because it's ridiculous. Other guys used names like Clark Kent and Superman people, or just TV personalities at the time.
4.5 years went by. Again, no word whether Dave was alive or dead. Then one day, Merle read a newspaper report that his friend was alive, but a prisoner of the Viet Cong. Merle, who had never forgot his friend, wrote this letter to Dave.
Because I wanted to be in touch with him. I wanted him to know that I still cared about him, I still loved him.
Read the letter, please. This was your letter to Dave.
Yeah. Dear Dave, one of the happiest days of my life occurred recently. I read your name in the Washington Post. To be alive and well in North Vietnam.
Somehow during the past 4.5 years when you were reported as missing, I could not give up hope that good old Dave was able to take care of himself. Ever since I've been in Washington, D.C., I've had the fantasy that someday, and hopefully soon, you would be returning to the United States and we would meet again in Duluth or here in Washington. I look forward to our spending time together as we did when we were growing up together on East 2nd Street. I understand your mother still lives at 1914. This summer when I returned home for vacation, I hope to stop by and see her. And I hope it will not be long before we all can see each other again.
If you're able to write, I would love to hear from you. Stay well, your old friend Merle.
His letter never got to Dave. More years went by, more deaths. Merle continued to inquire about his friend, but no word.
I expected that he'd be so. I hoped he expected is a crazy word. I said I hoped that he would survive. I knew it couldn't be great. I just hoped that they were. It's fine. I hope it would be like the movie Stalag 15 or whatever it was, the war film of World War II of the officers that held in the German camp and making the Germans were buffoons and so forth, and they all survived well. I was hoping that was the kind of thing, and I couldn't in my mind, or wouldn't let my mind fantasy torture. If it was there, I was almost like I didn't want to add to it by fantasy.
Our meeting was the first time Merle learned of reports that prisoners of war had been tortured, amongst them Dave.
It makes me angry as hell.
In the meantime, Merle was the rabbi at Temple Sinai in Washington, D.C., and equally important, a leader in the anti-war movement, even testifying against the war in Congress.
One of the reasons I was involved in the protest at all was, in my head, and it's never happened this way, but my head was, if I wanted to know what did my parents do during the World War II? What did they do when the world knew, and Roosevelt knew what was going to happen to the Jews in Europe? What the hell did they do?
An ex-POW returned home today to a mayoral...
Then in 1973, the war was over. A peace treaty was signed. A month later, after 7.5 years in prison, Dave Wheat was released.
Normally, the noon arrival of the North Central flight from Chicago doesn't draw much of a crowd. But then every day isn't David Wheat Day. After nearly 8 years, Navy Lieutenant Commander David L. Wheat came home to Duluth.
Freedom Day finally came, and we were finally got on that C-141 there in Hanoi, and the guys, they were a little bit happy on the airplane. But when that airplane rumbles down the runway and it lift off, then you knew you were on your way. And that's sometimes when I relate that story. Other times when I've spoken at groups, it just kind of comes up and grabs you.
Dave Wheat came home to a hero's welcome. Merle reached out for Dave again, but received little response. He only saw Dave in passing. Perhaps it was because many war veterans were bitter about those who had protested the war, people like Merle Singer.
I'm looking forward to meeting everybody as soon as possible, and it's just wonderful to be home. Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
I hold no hard feelings or anything like that. No way. But in effect, we did feel that it was prolonging the war because it gave the North Vietnamese hope that the United States would just give up and pull out. But the United States wasn't going to, and so maybe it prolonged our stay, maybe it didn't. There's no way of knowing, but that was just the thought.
Whatever the reason, that day it was all forgotten, as the two men reminisced about their past, looking at letters Merle had written to Dave's parents.
And there's a guy named Merle Singer from...
Oh my God.
who wrote a letter to my mother after I was shot down.
Really?
What a wonderful news I received recently when I learned that David was alive and well. And blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Laughing over pictures from their yearbook.
You're on the next page. Yeah. We're on the same page, actually.
Yeah.
How about that guy right there?
Oh my God.
Huh?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. Dave is right here.
Third one in.
Still look
yeah, right, yeah.
As they continued talking, Merle realized that seeing Dave after all these years filled a missing void in his soul, just as this whole journey to Duluth had. He resolved he would not lose touch with those roots ever again.
Have a good day here. Keep me posted.
We are on our way again, landing in the foothills of the pretty Smoky Mountains at a small regional airport in Andrews, North Carolina, courtesy again of Temple member and longtime Merle friend Louis Beck. We are flying on Louis Beck's private plane to Merle's summer home in Hayesville, North Carolina. This home is his place of refuge.
Myra has pointed out to me many times that what I'm doing since retirement, I've been more and more focusing on the past. And I have been. Probably because, when I think about it, because I know what's been in the past, but I don't know how much time and effort and issues there will be in the future.
Merle and Myra have had this home for more than 15 years. It is on a beautiful lake that stretches for miles behind the house.
It relaxes me. It's peace. It's real peace, quiet, no demands. I don't have to be a Rebbitzin. It's just, you can just be.
Merle loves this place, the house, the water, and his boats. He takes our 2 camera crew members out onto the lake to teach them how to water ski.
All right, now, do it right. Don't look like somebody with Parkinson and be an old fart. Got it?
Like any teacher, he is proud when his student succeeds, but you can't help getting the feeling that he would love it if it were he who was on the water skis. But no more.
You love water skiing.
I do.
Well, I was given special instructions to make sure that you didn't water ski. Because the truth of the matter is, if you had had a chance, you would have gotten in there too.
Oh, absolutely.
And why did you not?
I wouldn't say I'm afraid of my wife, but I better do what she wants me to do. I didn't do it because she'd be upset with me, and there is a possibility that my back might hurt, and if it does, and then I hurt for the rest of the summer, I'll be in trouble with myself too.
Merle's sister Sharon is there that day. They spend time together on the water. Merle comes from a family of 3 boys and 2 girls, and Sharon was the youngest.
But I just thought he was, okay, I'll say it. I just thought it was just, he was God.
She said, oh my gosh, she said, yeah.
You love him, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
He took me out on my first date.
What do you mean?
He took me out on a date when I was in ninth grade. We doubled with my brother and his wife. But that was my first date. I mean, it's fantastic.
Same way.
Myra met Merle while he was still in rabbinical school.
He was so comfortable for me and fun. And we liked the same things, and we laughed at the same things. And it was just a really good friend.
Her affections grew for him when she met his brothers and sisters.
Their family is so much fun. All of them, all 5 of the kids, and all the little cousins and everybody, and they're just a hysterical family. And I really envied that. I was an only child, And I thought, how wonderful. It scared me a little.
What scared you?
Well, they were very loose. Like I was staying in a room and he'd gone into the bathroom to take a shower. And all of a sudden I saw his sisters running into the bathroom after him. and I thought, what is this? I did not grow up with these kinds of things in my family, and their humor was very off color, always. And I wasn't sure how comfortable I was, but I decided I must be the one out of step because it really was fun.
But there was another side to this family. While Merle's father was easygoing, his mother could be abusive. Sharon remembers she could be really mean to her children.
Would you classify it as physically abusive?
She was, but that wasn't the
big thing.
Right.
Just the emotional.
The emotional part. Yeah.
Right.
Emotional, the abuse that way. Terrible. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that was what people that came from Europe, I don't know, because my aunt, my auntie was, I'd go over to their house and it was just great, the cookies and but she was hard on my cousin too.
What kind of condition would it be called today?
I could pick up a phone and
diagnose it.
No, and call for help.
Really?
Well, I think if I would have told somebody then, it would have been nothing. But I think you could tell somebody now, and
that this is going on.
Yes, and there would be consequences.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The situation was particularly bad when it came to how Merle's mother would treat his older sister, Marilyn, who grew up with what today would be considered to be learning differences. Myra heard horror stories.
And Mom used to beat her with an ironing cord.
Excuse me?
You heard right. She beat her with an ironing cord, and Merle, he didn't tell you about this because he would have to watch this. And he felt so guilty and so unable to stop his mother from abusing his sister, that because he was young, he was 5 years younger than the sister. And he would have to watch this, and he felt so helpless that all he could do was to take his sister out to play afterwards and make her feel good. And they were very close. And they had this whole close playing relationship with all these imaginary friends and a whole imaginary life that they had together. And that would make her feel better.
But again, it's hard to imagine in this day a mother beating a child.
Right. Even in that day, mothers didn't beat their children. Most mothers didn't beat their children.
Myra married Merle in 1965 while he was a student in rabbinical school. They lived together in his home in Cincinnati. After his ordination, they moved to Washington, then Philadelphia, then Boca Raton. Around 2005, fellow workers at the temple noticed Merle became foggy and sometimes forgetful. Then one day, at a random doctor appointment, there was this surprise.
I don't remember why we were at the doctor, but we were there together. And his doctor looked at him and said, "You look Parkinsonian to me." And what in the world is he talking about? Well, I didn't know quite what to make of it, although we'd always heard that the treatments worsen the disease. I guess people were referring to the dyskinesia that comes from the medication. And we saw people with, like Michael J. Fox, with the flailing movements, and that wasn't too pleasant to see, especially for somebody in Merle's position. But I don't know, it was always one day at a time, one step at a time, and somehow we'll find a way to find a doctor who will help, and we'll try everything.
And I thought, no, bad things should not happen to good people. Unfortunately, they do. I just couldn't believe it. Right. Of all the people in the whole world, because I know, you don't want to say anything bad should happen to anybody, but not him, not Myra, not either of them, because they didn't deserve it.
Myra, Merle's wife, is a star in her own right. Trained as a psychiatric social worker, she became chief social worker at the Child Guidance Center at the University of Cincinnati. Today, her focus is on families in need. She has founded an organization called The Giving Tree, run through Temple Bethel, where Merle had presided. Like Merle, She has had her own run-ins with health. In 2003, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
But interestingly enough, and I don't know why this is, never once did I ever think anything bad was going to happen. I just knew I was going to live. I knew it, even though it was a 1 to 2% survival rate. I never considered any other possibility. And I don't think that had anything to do with the fact that I did survive. I think I was lucky. I also had some good doctoring. And I also had Monsignor McMahon praying in the whole Catholic Church and every other church in the city praying for me. In fact, one time when they had the Interfaith Weekend, he made me come up to the pulpit, even so he could say a special prayer for me.
Shortly after we spoke, Myra was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, but with chemotherapy, her prognosis is excellent. Today, she is cancer-free. But this was not to be the end of our trip. Merle would not let us leave his country home until we visited Camp Coleman, a Jewish reform camp about an hour from their home. Merle grew up at Camp Coleman, one of its first counselors. Even though he denies it, it's clear that Merle and Myra settled in their country home in Halesville to be close to this camp.
I fell in love with Camp Coleman. I fell in love with the attitude. The attitude was, and that's why I wanted to, well, ever since they put the zip line in, I wanted to do it. The attitude was, let's do it, why not? No one knew no. It was, if you said no, it said, prove it to me why it can't be done. In the meantime, while they're trying to prove it, I would be doing it and others would be doing it.
This day, Merle wanted to try the new zip line that the camp had built over its lake. As usual, we were all concerned that Merle should not take any chances, but he was determined, coming down like a pro. Yes, getting some help after he did it, but excited over what he had achieved.
You are exhilarated by what you just did.
Oh, absolutely.
You're 76.
I can do it. And my wife said to me, what do you need to do it for? And I said, because it's here. If it's here, it's enough. And I can
You have Parkinson's.
But I want to know what the kids feel like when they do it. So I can, once I can understand how they respond to whatever the reality that we're sharing, then I can be a teacher of that reality.
Bobby, every year, maybe twice a year, you get a call, and you recognize the voice, right?
Right.
And who's it from?
Merle Singer.
And what's he saying to you, Bobby?
I'm up at the house in North Carolina, and I was wondering if it would be okay to come down to camp for Shabbat, or to just come down on Thursday or Wednesday. And I always say, sure, we'd love to have you anytime you want to come.
The camp director is Bobby Harris. Camp Coleman is more than a camp. It is the ultimate Jewish experience for young Jews. Bobby has run this camp for almost 20 years and says Merle Singer has been an inspiration to him and key to the camp's success.
He brings history, he brings love and joy for this camp, the joy he's experienced here, the love that he has for this camp, unsurpassed by anybody else. I mean, there might be those that equal his love for Camp Coleman, but there's nobody that loves Camp Coleman more than him.
And it is a feeling reciprocated by everyone here.
I mean, did you see all these people come out and watch him go on the zip line? They just wanted him to succeed. They want the best for him. And so many people came out. I don't know if you know this. So many people came to me and said, you know, he bar mitzvahed me. He bat mitzvahed me. He married me. So many people here. He's left his imprint on them. And he probably doesn't even know. But there are just dozens of people that already came up to me today saying that man was important to me. And he just showed up on any random day.
The day ended, and our trip ended when Merle met with the campers during their rest period. Always the teacher, Merle told the story of meeting his childhood friend David Wheat again after the Vietnam War had alienated them from each other, and the importance of putting behind past disagreements.
He and I hadn't talked for a long time, because this man over here, I met him this week. And David looked at me, and I was nervous. I was against the war, he was in camp. I mean, how would you feel if you were in a prison camp and your best buddy from school was against the war and didn't feel it was right? You probably wouldn't feel very good about him. I wouldn't.
No.
David looked at me, He said, Merle, what took you so long to get to me? What took you so long to come to spend time with me? And I just felt so good. I get emotional now. And my friend did not forget me. I didn't forget him. That we felt that what was right was wrong, wrong was right. We totally disagreed on what was going on in our country. But he said to me, Merle, that was yesterday. Today we're here together. So guys, don't ever forget the friendships you have right now. They last a lifetime. You can disagree. Your parents disagree. You guys get in fights against you?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, David and I used to get in snowball fights. And we get so angry at each other. And all that.
No, I get the last cookie.
Yeah. But when push came to shove, at the end of it, we were good friends. Don't ever forget that. Remember to always be a good friend. And when somebody says something, you have a fight with somebody, turn to them the next day and say, what took you so long to come back to me? Because I really love you, I really care about you.
It is September 23rd, 2015. Merle is giving the Yom Kippur sermon at Temple Bethel. It is only 3 months since our trip to Duluth.
The summer Dan came by our place in North Carolina. We had lunch together and we went out on the boat and I said, Dan, I think it's time for me to say I'll sit in the congregation with my family. Dan said, no, you're up here. And Dan, I want to thank you. And I have to add one other comment. Last night we were at
From
home.
his talk, you wouldn't know he has Parkinson. The disease affects your ability to speak, your breathing, your swallowing. But Merle is determined it will not affect him.
How wonderful it was to see Temple Bethel brought into our homes. There once was a rabbi.
Twice a week, he has been working with a speech therapist to make sure his voice is strong.
Doing whatever a rabbi of a shtetl would do.
Sue Levy, his instructor, coaches him, teaching him to pitch his voice low, then his voice high.
There you go. So because he held that high range for 5 seconds, it was considered successful.
She instructs him, make sounds with heightened volume for a long period of time. Computer screens give him feedback.
How are you?
And as long as he's in the green, he's good.
Have you seen my car keys?
He practices phrases, again making sure his words meet the required levels.
What's on TV tonight? Fido, come. You and you alone.
And he rehearses that speech that he will give on September 23rd, always with encouragement from Sue Levy.
You are the only one to turn your detours into opportunities. There is no other way out. My story begins on the spring morning in the weeks before my bar mitzvah. That was the morning.
And when he presents it, it is perfect. Merle tells his story, the challenges he has faced, beginning with growing up dyslexic.
People said I was careless. I didn't care. Wasn't smart enough. Didn't try. Anything but that was true. I just knew and accepted if I was going to be successful, I had to work harder than anyone else. I had absolutely no idea.
He tells of failing Hebrew at Hebrew Union College and the advice told to him by the college provost, who said in his southern accent,
Boy, you go home and all summer you study real hard. And you come back here in the fall and retake that Hebrew readiness test. And if you pass, you just plan on staying here, boy, till you're a rabbi. Understand, my boy? I said, yes, sir. Answered more.
And he talked about his Parkinson's and how to turn life's detours, life's challenges, into something positive.
So I stand here today to ask, what about you? What is your story? I ask you, take a look at your journey, the detours that brought you to the places that you never believed would be yours. Detours which, if given the chance, can become for you the pathway to fulfillment.
A sermon filled with lessons. The message, make bold decisions when faced with crises. Don't be scared, be courageous, and never give up on living.
All that matters is that you believe in yourself and make the effort, remembering it's not so much the challenge, but your response that counts. So I stand here to ask you today, what tough choices or decisions have you made, can make, or will make that became or will yet become for you, and yes, you over there? The choices, decisions that lead you, despite the risks, to go for it. To give all of us the courage, the willpower, the chutzpah to dare to live. Thank you.
It is December 22nd, 2015. We have arrived in New York City for a special medical appointment. Merle is excited to be here, walking streets of Manhattan, going to a Broadway show, all on day one. The following morning, he is tired.
We're here to see my doctor, Dr. Stanley Fawn. He's at Columbia Presbyterian.
The man we are here to see, Dr. Stanley Fawn, is one of the country's leading experts on Parkinson's. This trip is a big challenge, a lot of walking and talking, and without help, Merle is having problems with both.
And it's not a good feeling. It's more than just not wanting to be dependent on others. Honestly, that doesn't bother me as I thought it would bother me. What bothers me is the tentativeness that I feel, and the almost the fear I feel of being alone and not being able to take care of myself.
Before Dr. Fawn meets with Merle, his associate examines him to see how the Parkinson's has affected his flexibility and balance. She asks Merle about any side effects from the medicines he's on. He tells her, on occasion, he sees things.
What type of hallucinations are they?
I'll see something that I think somebody's walking along near me. Someone's walking alongside of me.
Oh, okay.
Emotion doesn't bother me. I do a reality check right away. Wherever that was, what I saw.
Is it always on the side of peripheral vision, or you actually see a face of a person? Peripheral, okay. Do they ever talk to you? No, okay.
With Dr. Fawn now in the room, she reminds him of the last evaluation.
Last visit, we recommended going down on the Mirapex because of he was constantly on the computer all the time.
Merle had become almost addicted to working on his computer, what the doctors call compulsive behavior, a side effect of the drugs he's on.
He tried to decrease it for about a week or two, and then during that time he noticed that his Parkinson's disease became worse. He noticed more stiffness, he noticed that his balance was worse, he noticed that the voice, the speech was more lower than before. So now he's returned back to his original dose of the Mirapex.
And did that improve then?
Yes, that improved, yeah.
And how long ago was it that he was here?
That was in April. April this year.
Merle tells Dr. Fawn his speaking voice is not that good, and he hasn't felt up to driving a car because his motor skills are not up to par either. But he is not ready yet to give up driving.
Last December, my son got me, who works for Toyota, found a 2003 Lexus convertible, and it's a great car, and I want to drive it. But I also want to. I know I've got to be careful for two reasons. One, I could hurt somebody, and the other is I could lose an accident and be sued.
Let's do this finger to nose test, okay?
Dr. Fahn does his own extensive examination of Merle. He explains that Merle's case is classic Parkinson's.
Being slow, in general, bradykinesia, slow to get out of a chair. Are you able to get up? Yeah, getting out of a chair. Well, you did it. Good. Slow in walking, slow in turning in bed. Maybe impossible even, severe bradykinesia. That's one of the most classic things. Stiffness of muscle, rigidity we call it. And the patient may feel stiff, but it's when the doctor moves, manipulates the muscles of the body like I was doing with Rabbi, and then I can pick up whether he has stiffness of muscles. He doesn't have too much, a little bit on the legs, very little in the arms. He has some in the neck. As the disease progresses, they start to lose their balance. And I test that by what I call the pull test, pulling it backwards as he did. You did it. Congratulations. That was good. Another one is the flex posture. The Rabbi has flex posture. You see his neck is bent down. And they may have spine curvature. So this flex posture and bending over features called dystonia, abnormal muscle tone twisting of the body. And another late advanced thing is when the feet get stuck to the ground and they can't move quickly and their feet are stuck, and then finally we call it freezing because it's like being glued to the ground, but then they can overcome it and walk. And these transient episodes of being stuck to the ground is another part of Parkinsonism, classic Parkinsonism, but it's not an early feature, it's a late feature. So he has some of the early features still remaining, the bradykinesia, some rigidity, and he has some late features, the flex posture, and his balance was still good, but maybe he has, by history, some freezing. I didn't see the freezing today, but he has it by history.
Dr. Fahn stresses the importance of the drugs Merle's on. The most important, he says, L-Dopa.
It turns out that in Parkinson's disease, the neurotransmitter dopamine is low in the brain. The dopamine neurons have been affected. First they don't function well, and then they start to die out, and there's a missing dopamine. And this dopamine, when you replace it with the levodopa, then people can function again, and they can move again. So it's very good for the motor problems of Parkinson's. But it doesn't answer all the problems with Parkinson's, because there's some motor problems it doesn't help. It doesn't help the dystonia, which is the flex posture, which the Rabbi has. And it doesn't help people who have Parkinson's imbalance problems. When imbalance goes, it's not due to dopamine deficiency, it's something else, so we don't help that. It doesn't help what's called freezing of gait. So these are some problems that are non-dopaminergic problems. And there's a whole bunch of non-motor problems. The soft voice does not usually help that much. There are many, swallowing may be difficult to handle. Other kinds of non-motor problems, mood changes, cognitive changes. So Parkinson's disease is not just a pure motor symptom, but a motor and non-motor. It's probably the most complex disease in all of medicine.
2 years later, I completed my undergraduate studies, graduated from the University of Cincinnati.
I told Dr. Fahn how impressive the rabbi's sermon at his temple 2 months earlier had been. He explained, some people are able to control some of the symptoms of Parkinson's by consciously trying.
Well, what's going on is just like he can talk loudly when he wants to here.
Right.
But he has to make the effort. For example, when we had one of our patients in the World Trade Center, when it was struck by the plane, he ran down, 80 flights or something like, 60 flights, whatever it was, as fast as anybody else.
One of the Parkinson's people.
Yeah. And in other words, even when I was a medical student, that's how long ago neurologists knew about all these kinds of things. There was always a saying that if somebody yelled fire in a movie theater, the first one to jump out of the seat and get out would be a person with Parkinson's. Parkinson people are not paralyzed. They're working on their basal ganglia. That's what's impaired. Their automatic movements are impaired. But if you get it excited, that what we call kinetic paradoxica, paradoxical kinesia, that something happens, they work only on the cerebral cortex, and they're moving fast. That's moving. They're bypassing their basal ganglia, which is impaired. But they can't keep it up.
That's what I was
They
going
can
to
only
ask
do it for a short period of time, just like talking, like
Right.
he had to give that speech, he was working on his cortex. If you ask them to run, maybe, walk, they can do it for these short periods. But then the brain doesn't want to work that way. The brain wants to work on automatic pilot.
If you exercise your voice or you exercise your muscles, obviously it's a good thing on a short-term basis, but can you improve the symptoms, or are the symptoms always marching against you?
Well, the symptoms are still marching against it, but you can't improve it at the same time. So retraining, just like an athlete gets trained. I mean, if he wouldn't be such a great athlete if he didn't do his practices and do everything. It's the same thing with Parkinson's. They have to work at it, and they can overcome some of the deficits that way. So it's very important to have the exercise program.
Our visit with the doctor went on for almost 90 minutes. One thing came clear. Merle's courageous fight against the symptoms, speech therapy, physical therapy, and his determination to go on living a normal life had held his condition at bay. As if to prove the point, we went to Rockefeller Center that night to see the Christmas tree like any other normal tourist. Merle even said he wanted to go skating at the rink, but there were no aides there to help him. So instead we walked up and down Fifth Avenue, with Merle delighting in the lights and the church and the crowds, and calling his family at home to tell them how much fun it all was. The following night, Christmas Eve, we were back in Boca, and Merle was at it again, delivering gifts to kids in need in Boca Raton, and planning his next adventure in living. It's just over a year now since that doctor's appointment, and Merle is still doing ballet with Parkinson, speech therapy, and physical therapy. And while he admits he is having more bad days, he has not given up hope, nor his determination to conquer this disease. A special thanks to Temple Beth El and Lynn University in Boca Raton for their participation in this project.